Hey everyone, this is D, Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And today I am coming to you all with my latest collaboration. Now, before I get into the nature of what said collaboration is centered around, I will go ahead and welcome my guest slash collaborator. We're actually coming up on a year knowing each other and supporting each other on this platform, which actually feels more like 3 years and like YouTube time. I don't know how that works. But without further ado, my guest slash collaborator, Sean, aka Lost in the Real. What's going on, man? How are you doing?
Pretty good, D. It is so good to finally be doing a collaboration with you.
Yes, I totally agree. And I have to say that your content is quality. I think you're a quality creator in general, and you definitely have consistently solid reviews and commentary, bar none. So it was a no-brainer that we had to collaborate at some point. So I'm glad to be doing it with you.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much. And I mean, you as well. Like, you're an incredible creator. And honestly, your support on our Cinema Squad chats are always so, it's amazing. So I'm excited to actually get to talk to you and talk about film with you.
So, before we get into our subject today, can you let the people know, although I don't know why they wouldn't know, can you please let everyone know what your channel is all about? Tell them, like, what is Lost in the Real?
Yes, so Lost in the Reel, I mostly do videos on YouTube, but I also am a writer for that hashtag show as well, so you can see my written reviews on that website. But Lost in the Reel, I do film and television reviews. I like to cover shows and movies that maybe people don't necessarily know are coming out. So kind of hidden gems. And I like to cover big films as well, but I definitely try to cover the more obscure stuff.
Definitely. I remember, I want to say the first review I ever clicked on was Sweet Tooth. I wasn't
Yeah.
familiar with that. And then you also, I think it mentioned Tribes of Europa at one point.
Yes.
Yes. And so I still have to check that one out. That's on my list. But yeah,
Where is season 2? That's all I have to say.
I know. I'm still figuring it out. All right. So the subject for our collaboration today is the top 10 movies that have changed us. Now, Sean, I definitely have to give you credit for coming up with the theme or subject for this collaboration. And I would like to know what inspired this and what was your criteria for the films that you wanted us to choose.
Yeah, so this whole idea is kind of inspired by, like you said, we've known each other for a year in YouTube time, which does feel like 3 years. So I wanted to get to know you more, and uh, for me, kind of talking about movies that have changed us in a broad sense of the term. I feel like you can kind of get to know the film critic through those films. So for me, these movies that I chose aren't necessarily my favorite films of all time. They are just movies that changed me or changed my perspective of cinema in some way. So that was kind of my criteria for this.
Definitely. And then from my perspective, it's not something I intended to do, but I think with my reviews, I kind of find that because cinema has had such an impact on my life in so many ways, especially personally, I find myself kind of reflecting on the past, whether it's childhood or whether it's certain experiences with family or culturally and things like that. And so for me, that's definitely something I thought of as far as making my list and really recognizing the impact and how like my perspective of film as a whole has really grown over time.
Absolutely. It changes every single day, it feels like.
Yes, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. All right, so I'm going to start with my number 10 film, and that is The Addams Family and Addams Family Values, directed by Barry Sonnenfeld in 1991 and 1993. And I have to say that this was probably like my earliest, when I think like the beginning of like my film experience, that was one of the earliest like live action films I remember watching. I had a VHS drawer. Definitely telling my age there, but I had or VHS tapes. And Addams Family, the first one, of course, and at the time, that was the first film that was there. I would say it was definitely the beginning of my appreciation for films with a dark edge and kind of a sinister, sense of humor. What I also loved a lot about that is how much I related to the family element of that film, because that really is at the core of it. They're creepy and they're ooky and they're all together, But yeah, but at the core of that, it is about this family unit. And in my own way, I didn't have a typical family dynamic, but I loved my family very intensely. And there was something to be appreciated about how odd and unconventional my own family could be at times. Not to this extreme, of course, but still. I love all the characters in this film. The performances are wonderful. Raul Julia, Angelica Houston, Christina Ricci, Christopher Lloyd. And lastly, the antagonists in both were really effective to me also, because we had Elizabeth Wilson as Abigail / Dr. Penderschloss, and then Joan Cusack as the iconic Debbie, as everyone would say in the second film. And the thought of someone taking me from my family or disrupting my family or just trying to just disrupt that whole dynamic, that was actually terrifying to me. Yeah. So they definitely were effective antagonists. So then both films ending with them standing united again as a family unit, that was very inspiring to me. So just to begin, that was a big part of shaping how I saw film, how I saw my own life, and how that could often, connect to each other. So I definitely had to include that one.
Oh, I love that. It's funny. So my family, they did not like Beetlejuice and Addams Family and stuff. That was not a part of our watch list at home. So I ended up watching actually the Addams Family movies recently, because the first collab that I did, not the first, maybe the second on YouTube, the Addams Family was brought up, and I was like, I haven't seen those movies. So I just watched them recently, but I love them. They're so good. Okay, so my number 10 is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. So I had to put a movie that I saw when I was taking film classes in college. And I really had to rack my brain on it, because when I took film class, I don't know what it was, the teachers that I got or whatever, but they just showed the dumbest movies. We saw Blast from the Past with Brendan Fraser. I don't know why we're watching that in film class, but the one that really stuck with me was The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And this movie is 100 years old now, but you can see how so many filmmakers like Tim Burton and others have taken inspiration from that film. So it's one of the first movies that I saw in film school that I was like, okay, this is why we watch older films, to learn how we got to this place. So that movie will always stick with me.
I had a similar experience to you. I had a film class and we watched that also. And although I would say silent film is a little outside my range as far, because there's really no film genre or kind of time period that I won't watch a film. Silent is a little kind of pushing outside of what I'm used to. Yeah. But I still appreciate it, because it's so interesting to look back at the beginning of all of that and see how far we've come since then, and how, really so much of what we see now, whether it's surrealism or so many different genres, it kind of stems from that. So, all right, my number 9 is Cloud Atlas, directed by the Wachowskis in 2012. Listen, don't really know where to begin, but I will take it back to the first time I saw the extended trailer. It was a 5.5-minute trailer. And although I did not really know what was going on, there was so much happening throughout. I just remember hearing the music and just looking at the imagery and looking at everything. And I was just like, wow. I was honestly blown away by it. But again, there wasn't a thought that I would go see it, because I'm like, none of this looks like it makes any sense. But over time, I just kept coming back to the trailer, and I kept coming back to the trailer, and I kept coming back to the trailer. And so by the time it was about the time for the film to be released, I was just like, okay, I got to go see this. I watched this too many times. I have to know the secret. I have to know, what is the story here? I have to know. Ended up watching the film again. Didn't understand every single piece, but it left a huge impact on me. And so much so that I watched it again and again. The town that I went to college in, we have a dollar theater. So then once it rolled over to the dollar theater, I went again and again and again. Overall, I have to say that I probably went, I don't think it's an understatement, but I probably went 10 times.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And each time I brought somebody else with me, like
Yes.
someone different. I saw it one time with my mom. I think the first time I probably saw it by myself, and then these friends, and everyone was interested in seeing it. I just told them, like, I really want you to see this, and I want you to kind of experience it. And again, not all of them understood everything, but pretty much everyone walked away from it feeling like, man, that was an experience. Like, that was something that that's not your everyday film. And what was even greater about it was that we would have these conversations, literally standing there in the lobby and discussing what we watched and discussing what stood out. Like, what was your favorite, storyline, and what, stood out, and what visually. And so kind of like fostering these conversations really with people who weren't used to doing that. We watched a movie, that was great, and we move on. But inadvertently, and it wasn't my goal, but I ended up kind of creating this kind of, I don't know, conversation and kind of community amongst my friends. And even as far as the film itself, all the times I watched it and how I saw something new every single time, how the experience was different every time because I had new context, new understanding. And I think it really shaped my own, I guess, way of analyzing film because there were so many details buried within these parallel storylines. And so there was just, it really left an impact on me. And it really left an impact as far as me as someone who appreciates film.
That's an amazing choice. And I actually have a film on my list as well that kind of reminds me a lot of your story with this. The best thing in the world is being able to like sit down with a group of people and just talk about what you've seen and what you have absorbed from it, and that movie's so beautiful. I went to go see Cloud Atlas in theaters. I was so excited because, like you, I was obsessed with that 5-minute trailer. Finally saw it in theaters with a group of friends. I am not kidding you. Here I am, like glued to my screen as the credits rolled, and everybody else that I brought with me was asleep.
Oh,
I was so disappointed. Yes, but I love that movie. It's incredible. So my number 9 pick. This is one I was really surprised was not on. Neither of you mentioned on your WTF collaboration, but it is Requiem for a Dream. Oh, this movie has like changed me in so many different ways. I've seen it twice, and the first time I finished it, I was like, I will never ever watch that again.
Exactly.
But I did watch it again a couple of years later just to kind of soak it in one more time. And I think that's good. I think I'm good off that Requiem for a Dream for the rest of my life. It's not only changed me because it scarred me, but it's kind of just changed my viewpoint of cinema and kind of like extreme cinema and how it can affect you in such a way. At the time when I first started watching it, I was in high school. And I had a couple of friends who were also starting to get into drugs as well. And it was one of those things, like it just really like shaped my viewpoint of how I looked at like drug addiction and all of that. So it just really affected me in such a way. And very few films that I've watched since then have hit me as hard or scarred me as hard as Requiem for a Dream. So I just had to put that on this list.
Yes, Requiem is absolutely not for the faint of heart, and I will leave it at that.
Yeah, exactly.
My number 8 is Memoirs of a Geisha, directed by Rob Marshall in 2005. Man, there's so much to say about Memoirs of a Geisha, and it definitely was a part of my Asian cinema experience. There were little pinpricks here and there. So, Mulan was a small piece. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was a much more significant piece. The Last Emperor was an even bigger piece. But then I think if there was ever motivation for me to become a cinematographer
Mm.
or have a job in cinematography and visuals and set design and production design. Like this film is the one because it is like visual art, like
Yeah.
almost every frame. But I think it's the first time I looked at the film and said, like, this is like next level as far
Mhm.
as visual style. And I would almost aspire to do something on this level. And then even with the score by John Williams, Yo-Yo Ma, and Isaac Perlman, I think that's the first time that I've ever taken a score for a film and just listened
Mm.
to it from top to bottom continuously. That the music just stayed with me. And I was so impressed by just how that entire story came together. And even looking at how the set, 1930s Guion and Kyoto, and how that literally was transformed because there are no places in Japan that look like that. Everything's very futuristic and modern. And watching the DVD, the behind the scenes, and seeing how they literally built an entire set, an entire town just about like the Hanamachi, building that entire thing, having it to where they had an alcove, they could cover it, they could have more sunshine, less sunshine, really seeing everything that went into it. It was really like a work of art in so many ways.
Mhm. That is such a great pick. And yeah, that movie is a work of art, 100%. Unrivaled in its cinematography, I feel like. Okay, my next movie is Seven with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. And this movie is on this list for a slew of reasons. First being, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. Second, because it introduced me to David Fincher, who's probably, I would say he's my favorite filmmaker of all time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's incredible. So in high school, I had this summer where I was kind of going through a friend group change, I guess you could say, and I didn't really have anybody that I was close with at that time. And so I just really just absorbed myself with movies. And I got on Rotten Tomatoes and they had like the little message boards and stuff on Rotten Tomatoes. And I had my little page that I made and I would just start reviewing movies. And this is kind of where this all started, was on Rotten Tomatoes. And obviously it's now on YouTube. But there was a community there. And I really felt that like I could finally talk about film with people who are like-minded for the first time. And, we just would throw out different movies like, have you seen this? You should watch that and review it. And Seven was one of the first ones that I watched. And I was just like, oh my God, like, how have I not seen this film before? Like, it's so incredible. And it really opened up my eyes. Like, there's all of these movies out here to discover. So that kind of led to this whole summer where I did nothing but watch movies and review movies. So that definitely kind of made me, got me to where I am today.
Yes. Seven, it's so funny because Top Model is responsible for me watching Seven because, and it's so interesting even looking at that show now because, ooh. But I have to say there was I believe it was Cycle 4. They did a Seven Deadly Sins shoot in the graveyard. Just looking at how they did the different designs for lust and wrath and gluttony, and I thought that was so cool. And I believe it was my mom then one day who said that, oh, there's a film like that is centered around this same. I was like, are you serious? And she's like, yeah, it's Brad Pitt is in it and Morgan Freeman, and you should probably watch it. And it's not like I was clueless as to what kind of film it would be. I mean, Seven Deadly Sins in and of itself is not a happy-go-lucky, subject, phrase, or whatever. But that film definitely takes some dark turns. And that twist at the end is probably one of the more shocking ones I've seen throughout my experience with film. So yeah, Seven is definitely an impactful film.
Yeah, no, that shoot in America's Next Top Model was so memorable, but that's hilarious that it led you to watching Seven the movie.
Exactly. All right, so my next film, my number 7, is Eve's Bayou, directed by Cassie Lemons in 1997. This was her directorial debut. I think it's a very unique film, especially to what was usually seen as far as Black imagery in the mainstream. And it's weird to look at it now because there wouldn't have been a distinction for me as far as types of directors, but I don't think I had ever seen a Black female director
Mm.
before this film. And there is so much that is unique about it. The fact that it takes place in the 1950s, but it's not about civil rights and it's not about racial discrimination. It is about this family and this community in Louisiana and just like their community and their experiences together. And then you have this like phenomenal cast: Samuel L. Jackson, Lynn Whitfield, Debbie Morgan, Journey Smollett, Megan Good, Diane Carroll, like, like the list goes on. I think that there are so many nuances in it that I didn't understand fully when I was younger, especially its exploration of childhood idealism, the things that we perceive as children, the things that we don't understand, and the things that can disrupt our lives as children. And how our lives, I guess, in the present are, very much disrupted by the past and still stay with us. And there are so many unique ways in which it explores the supernatural also, and so many other pieces. So I definitely had to include that. And I want to say it's probably one of the earliest films where the ending had ambiguity and was open-ended. It's not a perfect happy ending, like, oh, everything's great. It's like, no. What does this say about life and the uncertainty of life, and then how that impacts us going forward? So definitely had to include this one.
Yeah, I saw this film when I was younger. My mom loved this movie, but I haven't seen it in a really long time. So now hearing your thoughts on it, I want to watch it again. The next movie on my list is House of Wax. um, and I am a defender of this film. I know a lot of people think it's really silly, and it is. But this was the first time I ever saw an R-rated horror movie. And the whole experience of like me and my sister were like, we're not supposed to be watching this. I don't know how we got a copy. I think we got it from a friend. But, the parents were gone and we like turned it on, and just the whole experience of like seeing our first R-rated horror movie. And I think it's a fantastic movie. The set design is incredible. They've built a whole town to film the movie in as well. And just like the practical effects with the wax melting everywhere. It's really, for a horror movie, schlocky horror movie, it's really well done. That movie led me to my love for horror, as crazy as it is, because I hadn't seen any kind of R-rated horror before. And then I was just like, right after House of Wax, I was like, Mom, can I watch Halloween? And can I watch this? And slowly started putting that into my repertoire of films. So House of Wax, I had to put it on.
Yeah, House of Wax. I have to say, me personally, I understand we all have different perspectives on horror in general, but I really love Dark Castle's like horror films of the early 2000s. I enjoyed it so much because my introduction was, I've had an earlier appreciation of horror, and I kind of touched on that a little bit. There are other films, but I would say House on Haunted Hill, remake, like that was kind of my first like, whoa. Like, this is intense, and really appreciating the genre and just all these little pieces, and even beyond just being scary, like there's just so much of an impact like horror can have as a genre.
Absolutely. Yeah. What happened to Dark Castle?
I don't know, because I promise you, I watched 13 Ghosts, Ghost Ship, House of Wax. I don't know. They need to come back because I enjoyed all their films.
Like, they were schlocky, but it's like one of those things, like, now we just get really low budget horror movies. Like Dark Castle actually put budgets, into their horror films, and like, with great sets and costuming and everything. So I don't know. I would like to see them come back.
Yes, I would too. My next film is one that I already mentioned on my prior collaboration with Elliot, aka IMO Reviews. That is Mulholland Drive, directed by David Lynch in 2001. I want to say this is probably one of the rare movies where I have started out like completely like, ugh, no, like this is not a great movie. I don't watch this ever again. To literally saying, and I am saying, that it's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Like, this was my introduction to surrealism, to neo-noir, wasn't familiar with that as a genre or subgenre. I wasn't used to duality like this. I wasn't used to seeing a film have so much embedded messaging and saying so much kind of underneath the surface and having to kind of dig for it.
Mhm.
Ultimately, as far as the story, I love, and it's kind of heartbreaking, how it speaks to idealized dreams and goals and plans that you may have for your life, and how the reality of life can completely destroy that, and how that is revealed with the blue box. I won't go any further than that, but how that is revealed and how that all comes full circle, it's phenomenal. And it's probably one of the scariest films, genuinely, that I've ever watched. Like, I've never watched a film that's not a horror movie and been so horrified by it. There's just this unsettling feeling. It just feels like at any moment anything can happen, that these people are not safe. It's just it's so mesmerizing and so creepy and so disturbing, but it really is a masterpiece.
Yeah. My experience is very similar to yours with Mulholland Drive. I remember hearing about it and being like, "Oh, film noir! Like, I love that," and then turning it on and being like, "What is this movie?" And then definitely it was quite a while after I had seen it the first time that I revisited it and was like, "Ooh, there's a lot more to this than I realized." And it's definitely one of those movies like peeling back the onion. There's a lot of layers to it. But yeah, it's a masterpiece. Absolutely.
Yeah.
This one was a little bit hard for me. I wanted to put a foreign film on this list besides Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and I decided on Cinema Paradiso. I would say I saw Cinema Paradiso and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon right around the same time, and both of those drastically changed my view of cinema and opened my eyes to like a whole nother world. Like, it's not just like Americans that make movies, you know. But I decided on Cinema Paradiso because it was the first film that I had seen that really celebrated the joy of watching movies and the universality of film, and that in any language, you know, people can sit down, and the beauty of, you know, watching a film together in a crowded theater. And also the romance is just this sweeping, beautiful romance, and it's tragic. And Cinema Paradiso opened up my eyes to foreign cinema, as well as Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and I've never gone back.
Yes, foreign cinema really is an entire just world within itself, and it's one I'm so glad I had the opportunity to experience early on and even now. So yeah, Cinema Paradiso is one that is still on my list, but every time I see like the visual of it and see the poster and everything, I get excited to see it over again. So now that you've mentioned it, I'm gonna have to make sure it goes like at the top of the list.
Absolutely. And I'm a huge sucker for like coming of age films too. And this is just like the quintessential coming of age movie for any film buff.